Independent in thought and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on the Chad Benson Show. You can jump in at 844-DIG-CHAD. 844-DIG-CHAD, and you're in thechadshow.com online. And over on the right-hand side, all the little icons for the social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And I don't think so far that Chad has been shadow banned by Twitter. I don't think so. We'll keep an eye on that. We're going to get into that story a little bit later on in the day, because now we've got Congress people trying to respond, say, hey, what's Twitter doing? Hold on a second. It's censorship. Well, does Twitter have the right to censor you? I mean, it's not a government entity after all. It can decide who they want to allow tweet, right? Well, then you get into the whole FEC, Federal Election Committee thing. And if Twitter allows one type of political activity, but kind of shadow bans another, is that a violation of the law because of the election law and the amount of money? We'll get into all that. Just hang tight. First, though, I want to talk about your money really, really close to your own wallet, because there's a new study out, and it's got Bernie Sanders and all the socialists and the socialist Democrats, but, it's pretty much the same thing. It's got all of them really upset. They cannot believe the lies that are being told. Okay, here it is. There's a new study out, and it says that Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan, he's been talking about for about 3 years now. Medicare for all. We should have Medicare for all. Single-payer Medicare for all. Yeah, I mean, it works everywhere. Well, it works nowhere. Oh, what are you talking about? It works in Cuba. Have you actually seen what's that? There's two types of systems in Cuba. You're at the top of the Communist Party, you get a nice, medical and hospital plan. You're not, and you're out in the countryside, you bring your own sheets, you bring your own aspirin, and you bring your own cleaning supplies to the hospital. What are you talking about, it's to say? Look at what's happening in Venezuela with their health care. Look at what's happening in Great Britain with their health care. If you actually read the British newspapers and look at all the problems they've been having with their national health system, especially depending on which part of the country you're in, it is not good. But no, we just keep hearing how great it is. Why do you think in Canada, when people have cancer and they have to wait 6 months for an MRI, they come to America to get it? The ones that can afford it. But no, it's great. It's awesome. You just can't wait. Medicare for all. Now, look, Medicare does work pretty well for most seniors. You know why? It's not just a government program. Oh, no. You get Medicare Part A. That's the hospital program that you get. If you've worked for at least 10 years, you don't have to pay for it anymore because your taxes have been paying for it. Then there's this Part B for doctors. You have to pay a premium for that every month. And there are co-payments. And there are lots of things that aren't covered at all. That's why people then will buy something called a Medicare supplement or a Medigap. That costs a monthly premium, sometimes upwards as high as $1,000 a month, because you've added on, a couple extra riders, and before you know it, your money's way up there. Now, that's a really good plan. We don't want to get too deep in the weeds on what you can do with these Medicare supplements, but there are some that are really, really good, but they cost an awful lot. Most people can't afford those, so they go for something called the Medicare Advantage Plan, Part C. Are you starting to say, whoa, what is going on, man? I can't keep all that straight. Yeah, that's why we also have insurance agents that help sell that to you. I mean, it is not what they're telling you that it is. Oh, and by the way, it's, in debt by trillions of dollars. There are trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities in Medicare right now, and you want to do Medicare for all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so here's what the study says. Medicare for all, $32.6 trillion over 10 years is what this new study has said from the Mercatus report. Now, when Bernie Sanders was talking about this over the last 3 years, he's thrown out numbers like $14 trillion. But what's really funny is in this AP report, you get down into it, and here's just a great line. You ready? Sanders' office has not done a cost analysis, a spokesman said. Wait. You've been talking about this for 3 years. It's one of the main planks you ran on to become president of the United States of America. And you have never had a cost analysis run on that plan? And he's coming out and ripping the Mercatus study, saying, Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. There's no way it will cost that much. I mean, the Koch brothers help pay for this. I mean, it's the same old crap from the liberals all the time. And he doesn't have his own analysis. By the way, this report is in line with many others. There's a huge range of what they expect, but nothing cheaper than $24.7 trillion so far. In all the studies that have been done, it's going to cost at least $24.7 trillion over 10 years to do this so-called Medicare for All. Sanders threw out the number $14 trillion, but it's just the number they threw out. They haven't done a cost analysis. How can you not do a cost analysis on your number one thing that you're running on? Well, because we know that it would come back bad. As I mentioned, we're already in debt with the Medicare we have right now. The low estimate on our unfunded liabilities between Medicare, Social Security, and federal pensions, somewhere between $87 trillion and $222 trillion. Somewhere in that range. I mean, what's a couple trillion here or there? Even if it's the low estimate, man, are we in trouble. That's something you almost never see when they talk about the debt. They go, $20 trillion debt. They're leaving out the unfunded liabilities. Wow. Now, here's some of the kickers on this study. When you're talking about $34.7 trillion, that's the cost after all of the cost savings that the study says that a single-payer Medicare for All system will actually do. So, yeah, it will, help a little bit in certain areas. You can get substantial savings from lower prescription costs because the government would deal directly with the drug makers and the formularies, and they'd be able to, put a lot of weight behind their negotiations. And so they probably save about $846 billion over 10 years. You can also get savings from streamlined administration. I don't know about that when you talk about the government, but hey, they said that could save another $1.6 trillion over 10 years. Now, even after you throw in all those savings, it's still going to cost about $34.7 trillion. And get this, double all federal individual income taxes and all corporate income taxes, and you still won't pay what you need to pay for so-called Medicare for All. Not just the rich, doubling everyone's personal income taxes and everyone's corporate income taxes, you still wouldn't generate enough money to pay for Medicare for All. And that's assuming that doubling everybody's taxes isn't going to put a huge damper on our economic growth, which of course it would. But other than that, it's a great plan. I mean, I don't know why we won't just rush after this right now. All U.S. residents would be covered with no copays and deductibles for medical services. Well, but your taxes would double. Well, but you wouldn't be charged for this, and even that wouldn't pay for it. They might have to triple, but you wouldn't have copays. You wouldn't have deductibles anymore. Of course, as I told you, that's really not how Medicare works right now. Responding to the study, Sanders took aim at the Mercatus Center and said they get money from the Koch brothers. Aha! See? It's a conspiracy. But the other studies don't. And by the way, the people who did the study, the chief guy said, Blahouse is his name. He said, this is my work. This is not the Koch brothers' work. Now, at first, the Sanders staff did find an error in the initial version of the Mercatus report. It counted a long-term care program that was in Bernie Sanders' 2016 proposal and is no longer in his current proposal. So Blouse corrected it. And that reduced the estimate by about $3 trillion over 10 years, and that came up with this number, $34.7 trillion. So even after correcting the mistake, even after giving credit for the savings you would get from single payer, it's still going to cost $34.7 trillion. And doubling all federal, individual, and corporate income taxes would still not cover the additional costs. Even a former Clinton administration advisor has come out, Kenneth Thorpe, health policy professor at Emory University, Atlanta, authored one of the earlier studies saying it was at least $24.7 trillion over 10 years, says the Mercatus analysis reinforces his studies and others. He said it's showing that if you're going to do this and go in this direction, it's going to cost the federal government $2.5 to $3 trillion a year in terms of spending. Even though people don't pay premiums, the tax increases are going to be enormous. Well, so what? I mean, it's worth it, isn't it? Come on. It's worth it to get what you need. What do you think? Are you ready for this? Is this the winner that the Democrats are looking for? Sanders comes out. If every major country on earth can guarantee health care to all, okay, first of all, they don't, and achieve better health outcomes, they don't, while spending substantially less per capita than we do, well, for some they do, it is absurd for anyone to suggest the United States cannot do the same. Now, when he says better health care outcomes, it's just not true. Now, if he's talking about life expectancy, well, the life expectancy includes deaths to homicides. That has nothing to do with our health care. It includes deaths by car accidents. Now, that has a little to do with our health care, but it has more to do with how many people drive cars and how many miles driven per person compared to most other countries. We drive more than anybody else, and we drive faster than almost anybody over a lengthy period of time. I mean, I know there's the Autobahn and other things. And also suicides. You take suicides, homicides, and car wrecks out, we're number one in life expectancy. Now, if you look at health outcomes for serious diseases and serious illnesses like cancer and others, we're number one. So they're not being honest with you even about the quality of our health care. And that's not even looking at all the new drugs that come from here, surgeries that come from here, medical pieces of equipment that come from here. And you don't get that coming out of Venezuela and Cuba, even Great Britain. Nobody creates more of these things than we do. By the way, this will be about 11% of our GDP. 11% of our economic output will be spent on Medicare for all the first year. 12% by the end of the decade, and then it'll just keep going up, according to these studies. But hey, it sure will feel good, won't it? I mean, it'll feel like we have really done something for the average person. You realize we already have Medicaid for people who can't afford it. We have Medicare for seniors. We have where you can be on both Medicare and Medicaid if you're what they call dual eligible, which helps people as well. And then we have all different types of insurance that you can choose to have. And we also have non-governmental organizations that help pay for people's health care. So we still have lots of ways to help people who can't afford it. And instead they want to double everybody's taxes, and it still wouldn't pay for it. But it sure sounds nice. Doesn't it sound nice? I mean, it sounds nice till you get down to that. Love to know what you think about it. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD, and you are in. My name is Greg Knapp. In just a second, I want to explain just how bad the socialism is going in Venezuela, because it's worse than you've been told. Then we'll get into the soda tax. Is it coming to a town near you? My name is Greg Knapp. This is the Chad Benson Show.
Feel free to punk this punk rocker any time of the day or night. Reach Chad on Twitter at Chad Benson Show and on Instagram at Chad Benson Show. And oh yeah, the Chad Benson Show on Facebook too. Punk that.
My name's Greg Knapp in for Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD to get in. 844-DIG-CHAD. You know, the Democrats have socialism as their new platform. No, what are you talking about? Well, the DNC chair Perez said that Ocasio-Cortez, the socialist Democrat who won in New York, that she was, quote, the future of the party. They try to make it sound like Republicans are pushing this. They're the ones who said she's the future of the party, and she's a Democratic socialist. She's for Medicare for all, just like Bernie. And she said, you know, it'll probably cost about $4 trillion over 10 years. Well, not even close. I mean, Bernie Sanders threw out the number $14 trillion during his campaign, but he now admits they never did a cost analysis to really figure out what it would cost. And there have been study after study after study done. The cheapest one said it will cost about $24.7 trillion over 10 years. The new one says $34.7 trillion. Somewhere in there is probably the answer. And if you doubled everyone's federal income taxes and corporate income taxes, it still wouldn't pay for it. But boy, does it sound, I mean, it just sounds so nice. Until you start realizing what it really says is that they're going to forcibly take from you at the point of a gun the money to pay for everybody else's health care, along with all the other taxes you're paying. And hey, but don't worry, though. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to steal your money. What do you mean that's not stealing? What do you call it then? Redistributing the wealth. I've never had wealth distributed to me. Have you ever had wealth distributed to you? I don't know, everything I've made, I've always had to earn it, by actually going to work. But distributed and redistributed, give me a break. So then we move on to see, well, has this worked? Is this working somewhere? And we turn to Venezuela as the latest epic fail for socialism. And this isn't just some kind of theory. Real people are starving to death. Real people are dying from lack of medicine. In a country that used to be the richest nation per capita in South America. You see the new story out by the Washington Post? John Sexton's picking this up and getting some of the details out and some of the pull quotes. If you haven't had a chance to read it, Venezuela is at the end of its rope. Here it is from Washington Post. The citizens of what was once South America's richest nation per capita, now confronting a devastating reversal of fortune. As their all-rich country buckles under the weight of a failed socialist experiment. Yep, that was from the Washington Post. Failed socialist experiment. An estimated 5,000 people a day are fleeing the country. Venezuelan professionals are abandoning hospitals and universities to scrounge living as a street vendor in Peru and as a janitor in Ecuador. They said in Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela lawyers are working as day laborers and, get this, sex workers. A former well-to-do bureaucrat now working as a maid. Here's the worst. Here's the worst story. In Trinidad, a United Nations body, International Organization for Migration, has received 23 suspected cases of human trafficking of Venezuelans in the past 3 months, compared with 0 cases last year. And there's one woman who tells her story about how she was repeatedly raped and filmed being raped because she was trying to get her children into a better country. This is socialism. This is socialism. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show. You can jump in at 844-DIG-CHAD. 844-DIG-CHAD. I was telling you the horrible story of what's going on in Venezuela. Another socialist experiment with an epic fail ending. And the problem is, it hasn't ended. The one-time richest nation per capita in South America now has people losing an average of 25 pounds a year because they don't have enough food to eat. You realize that 1.8 million Venezuelans have left in the last 2 years? They're expecting another 2 million to flee this year. Wow. CNBC has just reported that they're looking at hyperinflation going up to 1,000,000%. 1,000,000% inflation. I told you about this one woman. The Washington Post just used a name. They called her Luce, L-U-S. Said she lost one of her 3 children in April. The hospital where she lives in Venezuela, or used to live, ran out of medication for a simple bacterial infection. Think about that. Think about that. I'm sure your child at one time in his or her life had a bacterial infection. I know mine had several. What'd you do? You went to your pediatrician. They gave you some amoxicillin and everything was okay. Her child died because they had run out of medicine. Because they're running out of everything. So she didn't want that to happen to another one of her children. And she was approached to come to Trinidad. Now, she thought there was something a little bit squirrely with the deal, but she said, I had my kids. I had to get out of there. I took the deal. 5 weeks, she was held captive and repeatedly filmed being raped. She said she and a friend were tied up and raped side by side. Quote, "We were looking at each other," Lou said, tearing up. "We would cry, and I would tell her, 'Sister, be strong. You have a daughter.' I would just keep repeating that." End quote. This is not some hypothetical theory. This is not something that you read in a textbook in college about how great socialism is. This isn't a Che Guevara t-shirt. These are real people, and they're starving to death, and they're dying of infections, and they're being trafficked for sex because their country has been destroyed by socialism. And there are people who want to do it here. This isn't a game. It's not funny. And it's not morally superior. It is morally inferior. It is not compassionate. It is repugnant. And yet we have people pushing it and acting like they're the good guys. You know what Maduro wants to do now? The guy who's leading Venezuela? I don't want to call him the president because did they really vote for him? Maduro says, all right, the way we're going to handle this hyperinflation going up to 1,000,000%, we're just going to knock 5 zeros off the end of the money. Wait, what? Yeah, we'll just knock the zeros off the end, and then everything will be fine again. Wow, he's serious. He really thinks that's what's going to do it. These people are nuts. That's what's going on right now, and we have people here that want to, well, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And she just tweeted something out today. Twitchy caught it, where there was this piece in Vox, an article she pushed forward, but she tweeted this: "The plight of working class people is the same no matter the city. Struggling to make ends meet in the Bronx, not too different from struggling to make ends meet in Detroit." And as the Twitterverse responded, "Hey, guess what Detroit and the Bronx have in common? Oh, that's right. They've been run by Democrats for decades." The same old liberal, progressive, socialist ideas that don't work. But they say, but they care more than you do. No, you don't. If you cared more, you'd care more about what worked. If you cared more, you'd want to help people up instead of keeping them down for the vote. If you cared more, you'd want to help people get a job instead of giving them welfare. If you cared more, you'd want to help them make more than minimum wage instead of artificially inflating minimum wage. If you cared more, you'd want them to get a good job to make enough money to buy whatever kind of health care they want instead of giving them the crappy bottom-of-the-line health care that comes from Medicaid. That's what's caring more. So don't tell me you're morally superior. Don't tell me you care more. You don't. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD and you are in. Oh, switching gears on you a little bit. Take your calls about anything we talk about during the show. Bloomberg is in trouble. Well, former Mayor Bloomberg, he's not really in trouble, but something that he supported is having a little trouble. Remember the old soda tax, right? Well, in Philadelphia, they passed this soda tax. And now we're finding out, Elizabeth Harrington has the piece on this, where a group backed by Michael Bloomberg to promote Philadelphia's soda tax has been cited for lobbying violations. Oh, so what, Greg? Lobbying violation? I mean, people, that's just a little, it's a little ethical thing. But so what? It was for a good cause. They were trying to stop people from becoming obese. They were trying to stop people from having diabetes, type 2 with the sugar. And you're going to quibble over some lobbying ethics problems? Philadelphians for a Fair Future is what they called themselves, a nonprofit organization, got about $1.5 million from Bloomberg, and they were trying to put the soda tax through, where they're cited for making material misstatements and failing to disclose its lobbyists. It was for a good cause. We don't have to abide by all these rules. I mean, I'm sure the Koch brothers do it. We're going to do it too. Come on. They did reach a settlement to pay $8,000 for the violations. Let's see, they spent $1.5 million to get the soda tax passed, right? Yep, it passed, right? Yep, worth it. I mean, really, if you're running this campaign and you know that you're violating the rules, and you know you're putting forward misstatements, and you know you're doing things you're not supposed to do, but you got $1.5 million to spend, and you got to get this thing done, and you got to win the vote. and you win it, and then later on you're fined $8,000, is that really going to bother you? Are you kidding me? That's well worth it, man. Philadelphians for a Fair Future credited as the dark money force behind the soda tax by Philadelphia Magazine. Well, the mayor, Jim Kenney, pushed the 1.5 cent per ounce tax on soda. Now in Philadelphia, soda costs more than beer costs. Soda costs more than beer. If you buy unsweetened iced tea, $1.28 for the tax. It's unsweet tea. It doesn't matter. $1.28. In fact, it was so bad. Okay, first of all, it didn't bring in the revenue it said it was going to bring in, because what happened? People went outside of the city to buy their soda. Duh. There was a black market on soda inside the city. Hey, man, come here. You want to buy a Coke? You mean cocaine? No, man, I mean like a bottle of Coke. Look in my cooler right here, man. I went outside the city. I bought the Coke. I'm passing on the savings to you, man. Come on. You're only paying half the tax. Black market for Coke. It fell short of the revenue projections. It cost the city jobs. And some Philadelphians said they were driving outside the city, not just to buy the soda, but to buy their groceries, because they didn't want to make two trips. So that hurt them there as well. Philadelphians for a Fair Future spent $2.2 million lobbying for the soda tax. The mayor, Kenney, said it was an army of unpaid lobbyists that made the soda tax a reality. Oh, that also threw in that Rodney Mohammed worked with the group. He's the president of the Philadelphia chapter of the NAACP, really backed the soda tax. He was not registered as a lobbyist, and he was hired by the mayor as a consultant, got $25,000 after he came out in favor of the soda tax, but they paid him under the name Rodney Carpenter, not Rodney Mohammed. Well, I'm sure that's probably his real name. By the way, Philadelphians for a Fair Future want to let you know that they are committed to transparency. Yeah, so was the Obama administration. I mean, they're committed to transparency. How dare you even question it? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. It was for a good reason. It was for a good purpose. We won. $8,000 is no big deal. Sure, we might have lied a little bit. Given misstatements. Right, misstatements, not lies, just misstatements. And everything worked out. That's how you get things done, man. That's how you get it done. Twitter censoring some Republican congressmen. You've heard about this shadow banning that's been out there, and Twitter pretty much admitted it now, but they didn't call it shadow banning. It's part of their new algorithm. See, they're just trying to keep the hate off of the internet. So Twitter went after 4 congresspeople. Representative Devin Nunes of California, Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, Representative Mark Meadows of North Carolina. Now, they're all part of the House Freedom Caucus. Those are the conservative Republicans. Isn't that interesting? It didn't happen to the Democrats. Not a single Democrat was affected this way. Now, here's what happened. You went on Twitter, and you wanted to follow one of them, and you started typing their name, and their name didn't pop up. They covered them over, so you wouldn't see who they were. They were hiding them from the search bar. So, it's not that big a deal. It just people that wanted to follow them couldn't follow them. I mean, come on. And now a couple of the congressmen are saying, hey, this shouldn't happen. Let's start with Representative Nunes from California. Here he is being interviewed on Fox on Sunday talking about this problem. Cut 4.
Yeah, you know what? I had no idea what shadow banning even was. Right. I had absolutely no clue. I had so for several months, people have been contacting me saying that, hey, I tried to find you on Twitter. I couldn't find your account. Why is that? And then you had a report that came out where, in fact, there were 4 people in the House of Representatives and the only 4 politicians in the country, the elected officials that were being, quote unquote, well, they don't call it shadow banning, but effectively we were getting caught up in some type of trap to where people couldn't see our Twitter feed. That was Mr. Gaetz, Mr. Meadows, Mr. Jordan, and myself. Okay. So I don't know what Twitter's up to. It sure looks to me like they're censoring people, and they ought to stop it. And we're looking at any legal remedies that we can go through.
Oh, well, legal remedies to go through. Okay, well, first of all, why did they stop you? Well, Twitter won't release exactly why. They did say it wasn't anything the congressman said. What they seem to be saying is that there are some accounts that follow them that the Twitter doesn't like. And there are some accounts that have engaged with their Twitter feed that Twitter doesn't like. So they haven't said anything wrong, but some of the people that follow them and engage with their account, the Twitter doesn't like them, and therefore they started hiding these people's names in the search bar. Huh? But now you get to the next part of Representative Nunes saying we are looking at legal remedies to go through. So wait a second. The government's going to come after Twitter to force them to put their names in the search bar? Is that the right thing to do? Should the government be getting involved, forcing Twitter to give equal treatment to different political congressmen and candidates and political statements? I want to get into that in just a second. Got a little more audio on this for you as well. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. My name's Greg Knapp, filling in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show.
A bird in the hand is worth 140 on Twitter, so tweet your beak off. A Chad Benson Show Twitter. And if instant gratification is your thing, hit Chad up on Instagram at Chad Benson. Your bird will thank you.
Yeah, you know what? I had no idea what shadow banning even was.
Right.
I had absolutely no clue. I had so for several months, people have been contacting me saying that, hey, I tried to find you on Twitter. I couldn't find your account. Why is that? And then you had a report that came out where, in fact, there were 4 people in the House of Representatives and the only 4 politicians in the country, the elected officials that were being, quote unquote, well, they don't call it shadow banning, but effectively we were getting caught up in some type of trap to where people couldn't see our Twitter feed. That was Mr. Gates, Mr. Meadows, Mr. Jordan, and myself.
Okay.
So I don't know what Twitter's up to. It sure looks to me like they're censoring people, and they ought to stop it. And we're looking at any legal remedies that we can go through.
That is from House Republican Representative Devin Nunes of California, and he's talking about the shadow banning of him and 3 other conservatives on Twitter, where you try to put their name in the search bar and it wouldn't pop up. And yeah, Twitter admits that happened now, and it's because, well, see, they bought this company called Smite, and they've been using them to fight hate speech and trolling online. And it wasn't that these congressmen did anything, but some of the people that followed them did. Wait, what? Yeah, and, they're back in the search bar now, and we're not going to tell you exactly what our algorithm is and exactly how we're going to do this, but, it may or may not happen in the future. Wait, what? And then you get to Nunes saying we are looking at any legal remedies to go through, and that brings up another question I want to ask you. Should the government get involved telling these people at Twitter what they have to allow to go on Twitter and what they have to allow to be in the search engine? The First Amendment says that Congress shall pass no law abridging our freedom of speech, not that Twitter can't. Now, people say, well, wait a second, Twitter is a public organization, and therefore they're supposed to serve everyone the same. Well, but what about the people that say, hey, I have the right to refuse service? Well, but the left says you don't. Is free speech telling Twitter what they have to allow? Well, we're saying Twitter needs to allow it, not that Twitter can't say something. Well, we also have Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz saying he's got an idea on what to do about this. Let's hear cut 9 on the shadow.
Well, I'm certain that there were only 4 members of Congress who had their voices suppressed on Twitter. Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, and Devin Nunes. So that'd be one hell of a coincidence. My suspicion is that if people were effectively communicating a conservative message, they got caught in Twitter's troll trap. The reason that I think that is illegal is because that it gives advantages to our political opponents. It gives them access to the platform that we don't have. If Twitter was a billboard company and they gave Democrats access to their billboards and not Republicans, that would be an illegal corporate donation to the campaigns of Democrats. Here, instead of the billboard, it's the auto fill-in function as a part of Twitter's search feature that wasn't available to me, Devin Nunes, Mark Meadows, or Jim Jordan, and it's available to Democrats.
Is that the same thing? Or is the best way to handle this what happened? Vice, not a conservative news outlet, Vice found out what was going on with this shadow Twitter banning, called them out on it, and now they've stopped doing it, supposedly. We'll see. Is that the better way? Let capitalism handle it. There are other methods to get your message out than Twitter and Facebook, but those are big ones. But should the government be coming in hard and heavy on this? That's my question for you at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD, because It could just as easily go the other way. Remember when radio used to demand that if you had a conservative opinion, you had to have a liberal opinion, equal time. And if you had a liberal opinion, you had to have a conservative opinion. If you had a Republican congressperson on, then you had to have equal time for a Democrat congressperson. And they really used that to try to limit conservative talk on radio. And they finally got rid of that, and then you had the outburst of conservative talk radio. Should we go back to that? Or are there better ways to handle that? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. We also have Ted Cruz getting into this. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. He was talking about Jones off of InfoWars having his pages taken down on Facebook, and he said he thinks that's wrong. Said he's no fan of Jones. But who the hell made Facebook the arbiter of political speech? Free speech includes views you disagree with. And I agree with that. But should government be telling Facebook and Twitter what they can and can't do? Love your thoughts on that. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. My name's Greg Knapp, filling in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp, filling in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show at 844-DIG-CHAD. You're part of the program. 844-DIG-CHAD. You can also jump online, thechadshow.com. And there on the right-hand side, you've got the buttons to push to get into Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so you can follow Chad and interact with them there. Lots of ways for you to be a part of it. No, he has not been shadow Twitter banned. So you can still get in and talk with Chad. 844-DIG-CHAD, and you're on board. I got a question for you to start off right out of the gate before we get into the media topics. Harley Davidson is going to introduce, are you ready? Electric motorcycles. Wait, Harley Davidson? Harley Davidson, where, people are proud about how loud their Harley Davidson is. Loud pipes save lives. You see that on their shirts. That Harley Davidson? Yeah. An electric motorcycle is not going to make a lot of noise. Are they going to have like a fake noise so that when you speed up on your electric scooter Harley Davidson, it's not a scooter, it's a motorcycle? Okay, well, hold on a second. I'm reading this from the AP, and their electric motorcycle is going to be called Live Wire, okay? They're going to release it next year. No clutch, no gears. So a scooter. No, it's not a scooter. It's a motorcycle. It can't be a motorcycle if it is an electric scooter with no clutch and no gears. You can call it whatever you want, but that's a scooter. Why do you have to talk it down, man? It's a good thing. It's not going to be as loud. It's going to be good for the environment. It's going to be really good if you live in a big city. Why do you have to be so mean all the time, man? I just want to call it what it is. It's an electric scooter. Harley Davidson's going to make an electric scooter that's going to look like a motorcycle so that you can feel good about yourself and keep your man card. That's what's really going on. I have a little thing about being able to drive with a clutch and gears, and because it's virtually gone. I love it when I see a carjacker who couldn't steal the car because he doesn't know how to drive stick. I love that. It makes me want to keep a manual transmission forever. But then on the other side, I'm not a big car guy. Okay, I'll admit that up front. But I was reading something about manual transmissions just last month, and a car guy wrote this. He wrote, it used to be that a manual transmission was more fuel efficient for you. You could save gasoline driving that way if you knew how to, shift your car properly. Or it could really help you accelerate faster if you knew how to shift your gears properly. But now, the computers in your automatic transmission are so good at shifting gears that they're better for your gas mileage than if you were doing it yourself. And even if you want to floor it and accelerate as rapidly as you can, the automatic transmission in the brand new car is better than you will be able to shift gears manually. There are some race cars that are now automatic transmissions. Even a professional race car driver can't shift better than some of these automatic transmissions. So why would you have one? The only reason you would have one is that it's fun to drive. I've had a couple cars that were just a blast to drive. The very first car I ever had in my life was an old Fiat Spider convertible. Oh, I love that car. And it was manual transmission. Love shifting that car. And I had a Jeep with, I could take the top off, I could take the doors off, and it was four-wheel drive, and it had a manual transmission, 4 on the floor. I loved it. But really, is there a reason to do it anymore? And maybe we're getting the same way with the motorcycles. Because I've often said, what's the big difference between the motorcycle and a scooter? Well, the big difference is the scooters don't have a clutch and gears. And so now Harley-Davidson is trying to expand. So they're going to start with an electric motorcycle scooter with no clutch and no gears. Because what they're seeing is in Asia and India, they've been selling smaller bikes, and they see the demand for the electric scooters, and they want to compete with that. So they're going to expand their sales of smaller bikes, 250 to 500 cc's, instead of the bigger bikes that you normally associate with a Harley. And they're going to put out the electric one. They want to compete with the mopeds and the electric scooters. So at least they're admitting that's what they're competing with. Now, my question to you, would you buy, I think there's two different things. If you are a Harley rider right now, would you ever consider buying a Harley electric motorcycle? So that's question one. And question two is, if you're not a Harley rider right now, but you kind of like the idea of a scooter or a moped, would you consider a Harley-Davidson electric motorcycle scooter instead of any other kind of scooter or moped? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. Now, they say they're not going to scale back their big bikes. They just want to expand into the smaller bikes and the electric motorcycle, and they want to expand into urban centers, not just where they're selling most of them now. I find it interesting. The part where I think they're really onto something here, they're not trying to dial back something. They're not trying to rebrand themselves. They're simply saying, hey, look, we can do this too. And we can compete in places we haven't competed before to expand their market share. And as long as they do that and they don't try to downplay what their brand is, what's their brand right now? Their brand right now is, we are the biggest, baddest you-know-what's on the block. And if you want to look like a bad mofo on your motorcycle, you want a Harley-Davidson. Because it's got the reputation, it's got the sound, it's got the rumble, it's got the feel, and it looks cool, man. And they're not going to mess with that, but they're saying we also want to add in this stuff. I'd love to know what you think. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. Now, on to what's going on with Giuliani and President Trump and Paul Manafort and everything else with the whole Russian collusion, Russian conspiracy. Paul Manafort, was he involved? Was he not involved? Was Trump involved? The big trial starts tomorrow. We'll hit that in just a second. But Giuliani's out there over the weekend saying some stuff that makes you just kind of scratch your head like, why would he be saying that now? And the biggest one was he's out there saying collusion isn't a crime. Now, at first you'll say, well, Greg, people have been saying that since they started talking about collusion. Why is this a big deal? Because Rudy Giuliani has never said that before, to my knowledge. And so it makes you start to wonder why now. And there are some people saying the reason he's saying it now is because it's going to come out that Trump did, quote, collude with Russians, and they want to make sure that they know that that's not a crime. Well, it could be. Or it could be that it's just another little piece that they're throwing out right now. Now, here's what we mean by that. Well, let's start with Giuliani. Giuliani tweeting out that CNN Politics was tweeting out what he said on their show. Giuliani, I don't even know if that's a crime, colluding about Russians. You start analyzing the crime, the hacking is the crime. The president didn't hack. Try it. And he was on with CNN's Alison Camerata, and he asked her, if you got the hacked information from the Russians here at CNN and you played it, would you be in jeopardy of going to jail? So what he's trying to say is, look, you guys, because they did, CNN read off some of those emails that were hacked by the Russians, according to our intelligence agencies. Every major news organization either printed some of those emails or read them off on the air. Were they all colluding with Russia? Well, of course, everybody would say, no, of course not. It's just once it came out and WikiLeaks leaked it, then it was fair game for everybody. Okay, then it was fair game for the Trump administration then too, right? Well, yeah, but the question was, what really started this whole thing was, did anybody in the Trump campaign work with the Russians to hack into the DNC emails? That's the original complaint. That would be a conspiracy to make a crime. That's not, quote, colluding. That's a conspiracy for a crime. And nobody has put forward any evidence of that yet. The other thing that could be a conspiracy to a crime would be if, after the Russians already hacked, they came to the Trump people and said, hey, we hacked into the DNC. We've got these stolen emails, and they're really bad. You want to work with us to release them? And they said yes. That could be a conspiracy to commit a crime. But has there been any evidence of that? Oh, we got a lot to get into on that. We're going to do it in just a second. But I want to get Rick in. Rick wanted to chime in on this idea of a manual transmission versus an automatic transmission. What's going on with Harley Davidson? They're talking about an electric motorcycle that doesn't have any clutch or any gears. Would you buy one of those? Rick, you are on the Chad Benson Show. My name's Greg Knapp filling in. Go right ahead.
Greg, about 40 or 50 years ago, AMA put out a research study that men driving vehicles with a clutch actually had a lower heart attack rate because of the exercising of the left leg using that to clutch.
Wow.
On your second point, I'd love to have a Harley, not too sure about an electric Harley, whether or not it would actually be as powerful as some of their gas-powered competition, similar to the 250 they offered 10 or 15 years ago.
That would be a really good thing to know. I haven't seen them give us the specs on that, Rick. You know, what's 0 to 60 on the electric bike compared to the 250cc? I haven't seen anything like that, but you're right. That would be a big part of it. Am I going to be, moving around like I'm on a little scooter, or am I going to feel like I'm on a motorcycle?
Absolutely. Are you driving or riding a moped, a scooter, or are you riding a bike that just happens to be electric? And everybody loves to ride Harleys touring, or at least riding. What's the range on the new electric? They need to get the information out to the consumer.
Yeah. Rick, what about the noise? Do you, and I don't like a motorcycle that's, when I ride a motorcycle, I've always ridden Hondas, just because they were cheaper. But, I want to know that I have a motor under me, but I don't like it super loud. What if this thing is like silent like a Prius? Is that okay?
That's okay in terms of nature and seeing what's going on around you on a bike. When I rode my Yamaha, I used to enjoy nature, and that was one of the reasons for riding it without the souped-up muffler. However, you look at the number of people that get ticked off by any brand of motorcycle that's rumbling alongside of them at a light. You look at their eyes, and you can see the despise in that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that being able to hear nature if you're out on a nice bike ride out in the countryside. Good point. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you getting in. Of course, there's others that say, well, then nobody's going to hear you coming, and maybe you get more accidents. I've seen studies on both sides of that. I appreciate the call. All right, more of your calls on that, and also more on what's going on with Giuliani saying collusion isn't a crime. Is he saying it just because it's true? Is he saying it because we're going to learn that somebody in the Trump campaign did work with the Russians? That's the speculation going on. Former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy points out the difference between collusion and conspiracy. And what is Paul Manafort really on trial for tomorrow? Now, the answer from the AP might surprise you. We'll get it all to you in just a minute. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you in. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
No fake outrage here, just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD, and you are on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. Still got the question out there. Would you think about buying an electric Harley? No clutch, no gears. They're rolling those out next year. Also going to put out more of the smaller bikes, 250 to 500 cc's, more urban markets, but they're not going to ramp back anything else. They're just trying to expand. So that's interesting. And Giuliani's out there now saying collusion isn't a crime. I don't even know if that's a crime, colluding about Russians. You start analyzing the crime, the hacking is the crime. The president didn't hack, and that's absolutely true. He went on to say, he had also said on Fox and Friends, I've been sitting here looking at the federal code trying to find collusion as a crime. Collusion is not a crime. And he's right, and that is a good legal argument that's been out there really since this thing started, but Giuliani hadn't said it, and Trump hadn't said it. But it's not a good political argument, because politically people don't want to see a candidate colluding or working or coordinating with a foreign entity. But what about Hillary Clinton? What do you mean? What do you mean, what about? Well, I'm just saying the Hillary Clinton campaign, we now know, paid a law firm, to hire a guy who paid Russians for dirt on Trump. Isn't that colluding with Russians? No, that's totally different. That is absolutely... I mean, so Donald Trump Jr. took a meeting with a Russian attorney who said she had dirt on Hillary Clinton, and that's colluding with Russia. But Hillary Clinton and the DNC paying to get dirt from Russians on Trump is not colluding with Russia. Got it? All right, good. Oh, and by the way, the Russians they paid were former Russian intelligence people. But no, that's not colluding with Russia. Okay? Just want to make sure you understand. There's a big difference between colluding and conspiring to commit a crime. So we go to former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy, writing in National Review Online, to kind of straighten it all out. He said, look, collusion is concerted activity. Not necessarily good or bad. Criminal or innocent. Just people doing stuff together. But then you go deeper to conspiracy. Now, that's the crime. It's an agreement between two or more people to commit a crime. And it's a crime even if its criminal objective is never realized. But if you try to do it, that's a crime. So here we go. The rationale for what the Justice Department and the FBI have referred to as Trump campaign coordination with Russia has always been suspicion, without much proof, of a very specific kind of conspiracy. Conspiracy to commit cyber espionage for the purpose of influencing the 2016 election. In other words, conspiring to hack the DNC emails and then conspiring to leak them in a certain way to affect the election. That's what supposedly this is all about. And McCarthy goes on to talk about if they even just worked with Russia. If they said, yeah, Russia will take that dirt on Hillary Clinton, that's not a crime. Doesn't mean it's good, but it's not a crime. He said, I do not believe it is illegal to take opposition research from a foreign source, including a foreign government source. I've heard some lawyers argue it could technically amount to an illegal in-kind campaign contribution under federal election law. And if that's something the government's finally going to start going after, that would be one thing, but you can't just do it when you want to. Finally, on the matter of impeachment, no question Congress can impeach a president for conduct that does not violate the penal law. Should they? That's a whole nother thing. And it makes perfect sense that, hey, look, there's a big difference between colluding and conspiracy. Colluding could be a political problem, but wouldn't be a legal one. Conspiracy would be a legal and political one. And time will tell. Well, hey, Paul Manafort, the big trial starting tomorrow, right? I mean, we start with jury selection. But did you see what the Associated Press had over the weekend? The headline was this: Manafort trial to focus on lavish lifestyle, not collusion. Huh? Wait, I mean, if you turn into Morning Joe or anything on MSNBC, I mean, you would think that Trump's already been found guilty of conspiracy with the Russian government. Paul Manafort's going to be on trial to focus on his lavish lifestyle? Oh, wait till you hear some of the pull quotes from this AP piece on exactly what he is going to be on trial for. We'll get you that. And then Nancy Pelosi referring to 9/11 as an incident. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
And my name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on the Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD, thechadshow.com online. You can also follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They're all right there on thechadshow.com on the right-hand side. Click on that and you're in. We'd love to know your thoughts on everything we're talking about. So the Associated Press puts out this piece over the weekend on Paul Manafort going to trial tomorrow. And you know, the left and the mainstream media and the Democrats, but I repeat myself, they're all saying that this is it. Paul Manafort, he's going to blow the whistle on Trump and it's going to be all over and we're going to have the collusion or the conspiracy or whatever you want to call it. But the problem is the AP's headline is this: Manafort trial to focus on lavish lifestyle, not collusion. Here's a pull quote. The trial of President Donald Trump's one-time campaign chairman will open this week with tales of lavish spending, secret shell companies, and millions of dollars of Ukrainian money flowing through offshore bank accounts and into the political consultant's pocket. What's likely to be missing? Answers about whether the Trump campaign coordinated with the Kremlin during the 2016 presidential election, or really any mention of Russia at all. Wait, what? It's hard for you to talk right now? Yeah, well, I'm just saying, you know, you think about it. The whole thing, Paul Manafort, it's going to be all over, and it's going to be all about Russian collusion and Russian conspiracy. And no, it's not. It's going to be on things that Paul Manafort did before he even joined the Trump campaign team. Years before he joined the Trump campaign team. Now, Paul Manafort very well may have cheated on his taxes. Paul Manafort very well may have gotten paid millions of dollars for stuff he shouldn't have gotten paid millions of dollars for. But is that what this was about? And, you know, there's an argument to be made, and his lawyers are trying to make it. You know, the deal where if you get evidence by breaking the law, then that evidence is thrown out in court. We see it all the time on cop shows, right? The cop that's really mad breaks into the drug dealer's house, finds the drugs, blows the whistle, and then in court they find out that he didn't have a warrant or he got the warrant for fraudulent reasons, and everything's thrown out and the criminal walks away scot-free. And that cop just gets so angry. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Isn't this the same thing? I mean, if all this information on Paul Manafort about what he did in Ukraine before he even joined the Trump campaign, in many cases, we're talking years before, if all that evidence came from a fraudulent FISA warrant, well, the warrant wasn't fraudulent, but the information to get it was fraudulent, then don't you have to throw the whole thing out? They tried that, and the judge said no. Well, the judge said no so far. Let's see what happens as the thing plays out. But Manafort trial to focus on lavish lifestyle? Are you kidding? The AP report goes on. Paul Manafort's financial crimes trial, the first arising from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, will center on his Ukrainian consulting work and only briefly touch on his involvement with the president's campaign. So the whole thing's about Ukraine? Nothing about Russia. Nothing about hacking into the DNC. Nothing about coordinating with Russia on attacking into the DNC to release this information to help President Trump win the election. None of that? No, not that we can tell. No. But hey, I mean, it's still going to be, you know, very important, a good thing to watch. Okay? Okay, I guess. But are you a little disappointed? You feel like maybe you're being let down? 844-DIG-CHAD. We'll see what comes out of it. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi, in her weekly press conference, came out and started talking about how the Republicans are weak on border security. That's what you're going with now? Wait, you're going from Trump is just too dogmatic and too literal in enforcing our laws, that Trump, you know, is so eager to protect our border that he wants to put up a wall, which is a horrible thing to do, to how dare Trump actually send people back who have broken our laws, to he wants to separate women and children, to now you're saying the Republicans don't care about border security. Yep, that's what Nancy Pelosi is going with now. And as she did it, listen to how she refers to the 9/11 attacks in New York City. Let's hear cut 7 from Nancy Pelosi.
This is the policy of the President of the United States. It's a diversion from how this was all dealt with before. We have a responsibility to protect our borders. Let's make no mistake about that. And Democrats have been strong on that point, all of our borders. In fact, I said to some of you before that when we had the 9/11 incident and the commission was formed and they made their recommendations, they made recommendations to protect America.
When we had the 9/11 incident and the commission was formed, the 9/11 incident, what was that? Oh, you mean the terror attacks where 3,000 Americans were killed? That's what you're calling the incident? I mean, we had an incident where I spilled the milk once when I was 6 years old on the kitchen table and my mom was upset. That was the spilled milk incident. But I think this might be a little bit bigger than an incident, Nancy. Are you kidding? Well, it was an incident. I didn't say it was a good incident. It was an incident. And so she's trying to say that when the 9/11 Commission came forward and made their recommendations, that the Republicans never did anything with those. Let's hear cut 8, please.
But the Republicans would never take them up. And
Not
some
true.
of it was about our borders. The Republicans would never take them up. It took us to win the election. That was in 2004 when they made the recommendation, the summer of 2004. It took until we won in 2006, first bill on the floor, H.R. 1, to enact the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission to protect our country.
Oh, man, if it wasn't for the Democrats, our country would not be protected, according to Nancy Pelosi, because the Republicans didn't want to do anything to protect our borders. You're going with that? All right, Karen Townsend did a little bit of research on this. Did a little Google search on the 9/11 Commission report. And the report was issued in August 2004. But most of the recommendations have been implemented, and in fact, a lot of them were implemented by December 2006. Now, the Democrats did take back over in November of 2006 on the election, but guess what? Those people aren't sworn in until January of 2007. And since there was much progress already taking place on the commission report by December 2006, that means the Republicans were putting it through because they were in charge. This is what she's going with. She's part of the party. She's the spokesperson, really, for the party that is calling for the abolishment of ICE. That is basically saying we're the party of open borders now. There are people in her party saying illegal aliens should have the right to vote. There are people in her party calling for amnesty for every illegal alien in this country. Greg, that's not true. Oh, yeah? Hank Linderman is a Democratic congressional candidate in Kentucky. Jack Heretic writing about this. He found his call for amnesty. Okay? He said, quote, I am calling for action to help the millions of undocumented people already working in our communities, serving in our military, and raising families by granting amnesty. Any reform of immigration law and process in the United States must include amnesty for those already living here, end quote. Hey, at least this guy's being honest. I mean, he wants amnesty for every single illegal alien who's living in this country right now. Every single one. So at least he's being honest. And we are having a growing list of Democrats calling for the abolishment of ICE, from Kirsten Gillibrand to Elizabeth Warren to Bernie Sanders to Ocasio-Cortez. And, well, to some people that don't want to admit that that's what they're doing. Representative Ben Ray Lujan, Democrat, New Mexico. He's the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And on Sunday, he was on with Martha Raddatz on ABC. And she asked him point blank, is it a good message for Democrats to call for abolishing ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement? He didn't want to answer the question. But let's hear cut 1, Ben Ray Lujan, Democrat, and ABC's Martha Raddatz.
Is that a good message for the Democrats? Abolishing
Democrats
ICE?
Democrats want to work on a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform package to address all of our issues across the country. I think Mr. Stivers would agree that we have to do that.
And he went on and he started talking about all these different things. But he never answered, is it a good idea for the Democrats to call for the abolishment of ICE? So she was ready to end the interview, and the Republican Stivers jumped in. Let's hear cut two.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you both there. I think you had a fair chance to make your arguments.
He didn't talk about ICE, did he?
No, he did not answer that question, but thanks very much for joining us.
And then the guy tried to jump back in, and she said, well, we're going to have to end it there. No, he doesn't want to answer that because he knows a majority of all voters, not just Republicans, a majority of Republicans, a majority of Democrats, and a majority of independents all say they don't want to abolish ICE. They think it actually has a purpose, and it does. And they've been arresting a lot of violent criminals. They've been arresting terrorists. They've been arresting gang members. They've been arresting rapists and murderers. And the numbers have been released over the last couple of weeks, including, like I said, murderers. I think it was over 2,000, if I have that number correct, over the last couple of years. So, yeah, they're kind of doing some important stuff. And you don't want to get rid of them. But, hey, some of the Democratic Party does. What do you think? 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD and you are in. Do you buy what Nancy Pelosi is saying? It's those awful Republicans who aren't securing the borders, and it's a good thing you got them? Do you like the idea of abolishing ICE? Is that where we need to go? That's the next step? Well, we could end up like Paris. There's a city right on the edge of Paris. This is out of the Daily Mail. It's the Saint-Denis, and it's just northeast of Paris, about 6 miles away from the Eiffel Tower. And there are about 300,000 illegal aliens living in there right now. And politicians are warning that it could turn into a huge ethnic ghetto, that's their quote, within 2 decades. In May, the French riot police had to clear 1,000 migrants from a makeshift camp in Saint-Denis. And it's really straining public services, creating social tensions. There's an estimated 600,000 Muslims from North Africa or sub-Saharan African backgrounds, according to the Daily Mail. Official legal population in the suburb, 1.5 million, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and more illegal aliens. And they're worried that this is going to be a real strain on the social services and on the police. But hey, if you say that, you're a horrible, awful, evil person. Oh, President Trump was also asked if he had a red line on his border funding and funding for the wall. And let's hear what he said let's start with what he said about the government shutdown over this. Cut 10 for President Trump.
I would certainly be willing to close it down to get it done. As you know, we are already approving things in various bills, including we're going to be taking care of the military. We always put the military and law enforcement very high. But I would be certainly willing to consider a shutdown if we don't get proper border security.
As President Trump, do we really want to be talking about a government shutdown again? Now, I know there's a leading question from the reporters. President Trump, if the Democrats don't give you your funding that you want, are you going to shut the government down? But do you take the bait like that, or is that the way to get these talks really rolling? What do you think? And then I'll get you what President Trump said about the idea of, is this a red line to Congress if they won't give you your border funding? 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board. My name's Greg Knapp in for Chad Benson. This is the Chad Benson Show.
Deep states? No. Deep doo-doo? Yeah. The Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on the Chad Benson Show. You can jump in as well at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD, thechadshow.com online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all on the right-hand side. Click the icon and you're following along. We were talking about President Trump with his illegal immigration situation, and the press conference that President Trump recently had with the Italian Prime Minister, he was asked by Sagar Engetti, that's the name of the reporter. He has asked this: President Trump, are you saying you would be willing to shut the government down in September if it does not fully fund $25 billion for the border wall and also deliver the immigration priorities that you listed in your tweet? Or are you leaving some room for negotiation there? So there's the question. The answer is cut 10.
I would certainly be willing to close it down to get it done. As you know, we are already approving things in various bills, including we're going to be taking care of the military. We always put the military and law enforcement very high. But I would be certainly willing to consider a shutdown if we don't get proper border security.
Now, I just don't know that that's a smart answer. I think I would say, look, it's not up to me to shut the government down. We're going to fully fund this stuff, and if the Democrats block it, then they're shutting down the government. I mean, that's my answer, but, hey, I'm not the president. What do you think? Then there was a follow-up. The reporter asks, is the $25 billion a red line for you? Now, the $25 billion is for the creation of the border wall. So is the $25 billion a red line for you, President Trump, cut 11?
I have no red line, unlike President Obama. I just want great border security. Okay?
So there's the negotiation. There's the wiggle room. There's him just saying, look, man, I just want to get this thing done. I'm not putting a red line down. I'm not drawing a line in the sand. I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just saying we need to get this done. And we've been talking about doing it for a couple years now, and we want to get it done. What do you think? Is that going to get done? Are they going to be able to get that through? Because that's something that the Democrats see as a red line. I mean, they're talking about abolishing ICE. They're not going to want to do that. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD. Now, here's the thing I want to move into to start the next hour, and I'll start it right now with you. In Canada, there is a man who found a loophole to save some money. Okay, he's in his early 20s, got a brand new Chevrolet Cruze. He is a guy who's had a couple problems driving. He's had a speeding ticket. He's had a wreck. And so when his insurance company quoted him a rate, they said $4,517. Wow. For one car? Yep. $4,517. He said, man, that's a lot of money. What would it be if I was a woman? Because, men get charged more. Young men get charged more for their car insurance than young women do, both in Canada and the United States of America. Why? Well, statistically, they get into more wrecks. No, women drivers are bad. Well, not statistically. No, not statistically. So he said, all right, how much will it be if I was a woman? And they go, well, hold on a second. You got the calculator. If you're a woman, it'd be $3,423. You're telling me I'll save over $1,000 if I was a woman instead of a man? Yeah. Said, all right, I'm a woman. No, you can't do that. But guess what? In Canada, there was a way he could. I'll tell you all about that in just a second. Do you think it's fair, right, fraudulent? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. My name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's the Chad Benson Show.
Iranian President Rouhani cautioned President Trump about pursuing hostile policies. Rouhani said, quote, America.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show. You can jump in at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD. You can also go to thechadshow.com online. So here's some interesting news coming out from Fox News that Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh has now met with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Now, he is the very first Democrat to sit down with Kavanaugh. And so there are people saying, hey, this may be the Democratic dam breaking. And it may be that Democrats who are living in red states that voted for Trump are saying the Democrats can't stop Kavanaugh from being confirmed. So why in the world would I hurt my possibility of being reelected by going along off a cliff with this suicidal idea of trying to do everything they can to stop a guy who's going to get through anyway. A statement of Fox News, Manchin's Republican challenger, West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, accused Manchin of making a craven political calculation by delaying his decision on Kavanaugh's nomination until the outcome has already been decided. Oh, yeah. Well, he had to play. That's politics, man. It's politics. So what do you think? Is Kavanaugh's confirmation now a done deal? 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. So right before the news, I was talking to you about this interesting story coming out of Canada. There's a guy in Canada. He's in his early 20s, and he had some speeding tickets, and he had a crash on his record. He bought a brand-new Chevrolet Cruze, called up his insurance company. He said, hey, I got to get insured. It's required in my country. Okay. $4,517. I'm only one person with one car. I know. $4,517. What? So he wanted to save a little money. He said, well, what happened if I was a woman? Well, if you're a woman, it would only cost you $3,423. I could save $91 a month? Yeah. If you're a woman, but you're not. All right, well, I want you to consider me a woman. No, we can't do that. We'll just change it on paper. No, that's not how it works. So he thought it was over. But no, he said, wait a second. I know that the government of Alberta now allows you to legally change your gender based on how you feel. So he went to the doctor. He got the note from the doctor. At first he thought he had to actually have a sex change, so he thought it was going to let it go. But no, all he had to do was get the letter from his doctor saying that he identified as a woman. All he had to do was tell his doctor that he wished to change his sex. He didn't have to actually do it, just had to wish to change his sex. So he said, that's what I want. I want to change my sex. I want to be a woman. Got the doctor to write the note, sent it in. He got a new birth certificate in the mail, officially changing him to a woman. Sent that into the car insurance. He's saving $91 a month on insurance. And then he went on Reddit and bragged about it in April. And, of course, that got everybody mad. Oh, man. The transgender community in Canada, they're outraged. They say this cheapens the whole process, cast doubts on everybody else's motives for making their changes and their wishes. And it's just not right. And it's just going to allow people to want to take away rights from trans people. To which I say, how do you know that he doesn't really feel like a woman? Well, he said, here's what he said. I did it for cheaper car insurance. See, he admits it. But he also said he didn't legally change his sex solely for cheaper auto insurance. He said it's a big factor. And he said it's also a big factor for other people who suffer from gender dysphoria. What? How dare he say? Now, wait a second. Who are you to say what this man feels? If this man feels more like a woman because he's really mad that as a man he's being charged more for car insurance, and that's part of why he feels like a woman, then who are you to say that he shouldn't be able to feel the way he wants to feel? I think you just need to check yourself a little bit. There was an elected official in Alberta very upset about it, tweeting that he's committed perjury and admitted to it, punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Well, no, I'd like to see you try and take that to court because you say, I feel like a woman to get my car insurance right. Now, it's not the only reason. There are other reasons I may feel that way, but see, you're just making fun of the whole thing. Well, not really. Really getting down to the brass tacks of who decides what when you're getting to how somebody feels. And it also opens up this whole idea about, are men and women discriminated against based on their sex? Well, yes, they are. And that's not always illegal. Well, it should be. All right. Should it be illegal for men to be charged more for car insurance when they're young than women? Yes, it's not fair. Everybody should be treated as an individual. Okay, then everybody's going to have to pay more money for their car insurance. Because the way insurance works is you look at the risk based on the group. That's how you do it. And that's how they're able to actually make money as an insurance company, stay profitable, and also pay off when you get in a wreck. Men getting more wrecks, young men getting more wrecks than young women do. So young men are charged more for their insurance. Not fair to the individual. What if you're a young man and you've never been in a wreck in your life and you're the best driver out there? Too bad. You got to pay more. Well, that's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. But it's the best system we can come up with. Otherwise, everybody's going to pay more. Well, all the women will. The men will pay less. Well, that's not fair. I know. There is no such thing as fair when it comes to this. Let's say you go into the beauty salon and you're a woman and you want your hair cut a certain way. You're going to pay more than the man getting his hair cut. Well, that's not fair. Well, I guess it depends on what kind of haircut you're getting, right? If you're a man, you got a very short haircut and it takes him 5 minutes to do it. Shouldn't that cost less than the woman who's got really long hair and wants it done just a certain way and is very upset if you don't do it exactly right? No, it's still not fair. I mean, we could go right down the line. How about age discrimination? Should it be fair for senior citizens to get discounts for the movies? Discounts for restaurants, discounts for hotels, discounts for you name it. I mean, it's really not fair to the people younger than 65, is it? Well, that's different. I'm just saying there's a lot of different types of discrimination. Sometimes we say it's okay. Sometimes we say it's not. And this guy said, I'm tired of being discriminated against because I'm a young man, and that makes me feel like I should be a woman. So since I feel like I should be a woman, my government says I can be a woman. So he got the note from the doctor. He gets his birth certificate changed, and he's saving $91 a month on his car insurance. Maybe that'll be the new Geico commercial. Probably not. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. And while we're talking about some interesting stories, there's a website called Study Finds, and they just keep looking at all the latest studies coming out. And this one makes total sense to me. It was from Penn State University, and instead of looking just at the effects of stress, they looked at how much your stress can be increased by how you think and how much that can impact your memory and behavior throughout the day. And here's what they found. If you wake up believing your day is going to be stressful, you will probably be less productive and have a tougher day at the office. And what they mean by that, let's say that you have a big presentation. You wake up and you're like, oh, man, it's going to be a tough day. I got that big presentation. We got all the bigwigs there. I've got to do this with my PowerPoint that I'm still not really sure about. Got 50 people I got to put this in front of. I don't even have the answers to all the questions I know they're going to ask. Man, this is just going to be so stressful. I don't know. Well, you're going to have a harder day. What they found is it's even going to affect your short-term memory. It says humans can think about and anticipate things before they happen. Now, it can help us prepare for and even prevent certain events. This is one of the authors of the study. But the study suggests that this ability can also be harmful to your daily memory function, independent of whether the stressful events actually happen or not. So, in other words, even if you end up doing well that day, the stress is still going to be there, and it's still going to negatively impact your performance throughout the entire day. So even if the things that you didn't think were going to happen didn't happen, like let's say you were stressed out about, oh, man, I'm worried that the shipment isn't going to come on time, and if the shipment doesn't come on time, then this is going to happen, that's going to happen, that's going to happen, and you're worried all day, and then the shipment comes on time. The stressful thing didn't even happen. It still impacted your day. So what do you do about it? Well, they say if you wake up optimistic about what's going to happen, you don't have those problems. Well, how do you end up getting optimistic? Well, there's a couple things. If it's something you can prepare for, obviously prepare for it better. But if it's something like, is the shipment going to come or not, and you have no control over it anyway, then you do things like deep breathing exercises, you do rational emotive therapy, some cognitive behavioral therapy, those kind of things to get your mind in the right set. Have you ever had that situation happen to you? Where you just woke up knowing it was going to be a bad day, and then you had a really bad day? The old self-fulfilling prophecy? Study finds that probably makes perfect sense. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD. Do you remember the missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370? Well, they're now coming out with their final report, Malaysia, on what they think happened. I'll get you the details on that in just a minute. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. My name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Are you PC and groupthink brainwashed? Time for a double detox shot of Chad.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad on the Chad Benson Show. 844-DIG-CHAD. Get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. Going to get you the story about what's going on with violent threats against Republicans, while the New York Times is worried that President Trump is the one that's causing violence. Okay, we'll hit that. But first, the latest on the missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. You remember that. That goes back to March 2014. It's a Boeing 777. There were about 239 people on it from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, and it just vanished. And we've never been able to find the wreckage, and there have been all kinds of investigations into it. Well, today they released, the 19-member international team released another report. No firm conclusions. They said there could be another report if we ever find the stuff, but they did come to some. If it's not a firm conclusion, what kind of conclusion is it, Greg? I don't know. A mushy conclusion? Yeah, they came to some mushy conclusions. And what they said was, it's much more likely that the maneuvers away from their normal route were due to the systems being manipulated than a flaw of the airplane. The report noted it was difficult for the aircraft's course change to be attributed to mechanical or system failures. So they believe someone changed the course of the plane. Who? They don't know. They said there wasn't enough information to determine if the plane broke up in the air or during impact with the ocean. The chief investigator said there was no evidence of abnormal behavior or stress among the pilots. And the passengers were all cleared by police. None of them had any pilot training, as they've been looking into everybody that was on the plane. Chief investigator: we are not of the opinion it could have been an event committed by the pilots, but they're not ruling out any possibility. We cannot exclude that there was an unlawful interference by a third party. Okay, so wait, so they're saying the pilots didn't do it, the passengers didn't do it, but we're not ruling out a third party. Well, what other third party could there be? I mean, you cleared the passengers and you cleared the pilots. But they do believe the change in course was manually done. The systems in the plane that you usually track the plane with, manually turned off. Well, somebody did it. And if not the pilots, and you said you've cleared all the passengers, then I don't know who's left. No groups that have hijacked the plane, no ransom demands have ever been made. The rogue pilot theory is still open in public discussions, but they're saying they don't believe it happened. But they didn't find any flaws with the plane, no mechanical flaws. And they also said there was zero evidence that the plane was remotely controlled. Well, then it sounds like you basically gave us a whole pile of nothing in that report. I mean, nothing that we didn't already know. And you're not willing to say it was anybody. Well, you know, we just don't know. We don't want to blame it on somebody. I understand you don't want to blame it on somebody. I guess what we really did get out of it was that we now know 100% for sure that the plane was manually moved off course and that the tracking system was manually turned off. So somebody did that. And there had to be a reason for it. 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD. And Fox has an interesting piece up today. Well, actually, they grabbed it from the New York Post. It's Carol Markowitz, and she's talking about this violence, this political violence that has been going on since President Trump was elected. And the vast majority of this violence has been from the so-called resistance, the far left of the Democratic Party. We've had a Republican congressman shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter. Last week, a man was indicted for threatening to kill Republican Representative Diane Black. She said there were serious enough threats that the grand jury did take action. This month, Black's fellow Republican congressman, Jason Lewis, said his daughters were threatened. We have a man who threatened to chop up Senator Rand Paul's family with an axe. We had a situation outside the campaign office of Representative Lee Zeldin threatening to kill Trump supporters. The Nebraska Republican office had bricks thrown through its windows and graffiti painted on its wall. Just last week, a guy was beaten up in Oakland, California. A crowd thought he was the member of the Proud Boys. It's a right-wing pro-Trump men's rights group. I don't know anything about them. But that's what's been going on. And yet, over the weekend, the New York Times publisher said he complained to President Trump about potential violence against journalists. Quote, I told the president directly that I thought that his language, when he complains about the media, I thought that his language was not just divisive, but increasingly dangerous. I told him that although the phrase fake news is untrue and harmful, I am far more concerned about his labeling journalists the enemy of the people. I warned that this inflammatory language is contributing to a rise in threats against journalists and will lead to violence. But he didn't say anything to President Trump about the way the media talks about President Trump and President Trump supporters, leading to real violence that has already occurred against Congresspeople, their families, and their supporters. How come the media isn't talking more about that? Got more details on that in just a minute. My name is Greg Knapp. I'm in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent in thoughts and punk rock in life. It's The Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp. I am in for Chad on The Chad Benson Show. You can jump on board at 844-DIG-CHAD, 844-DIG-CHAD, also online, thechadshow.com. And we're talking about what's going on with violence in politics because the New York Times publisher comes out and says, yeah, I had a talk with President Trump about him calling us fake news and saying that the journalists are the enemy of the people. And it's going to lead to more threats of violence and maybe even violence, potential violence. Well, did you talk to him about the fact that the way your media, your newspaper, and other newspapers and other TV outlets have categorized the president and his supporters, that could have led to real violence? I mean, there's no way to know if the people who are beating up Trump supporters, ripping off their hats, spitting on their hats, calling them all kinds of names, getting into fights with them, destroying the Trump Hollywood star, doing vandalism. There's no way to know for sure if that's, incited to some degree by your media, but there's real violence going on. You realize the congressperson was shot. You realize another person was indicted for threatening a congressperson. So where's your reporting on that? They don't seem to want to. There was a piece in Breitbart that put this out earlier this month, and they listed what they call 538 acts of media-approved violence and harassment against Trump supporters. So when not calling Trump supporters Nazis as a means to dehumanize them, the establishment media like to whine about the lack of civility in American politics, even as they cover up, ignore, downplay, or straight up approve of the wave of violence and public harassment we're seeing against supporters of President Trump. So remember how crazy the media went over a nobody rodeo clown who wore an Obama mask? Oh, do you remember that? I was working at a station in Kansas City at the time, so I hit this story pretty hard because they got this guy fired and called him racist and all these other kind of names because he was a rodeo clown who at one point during the show put on an Obama mask as he was, trying to keep the bulls away from the cowboys. Well, there's one big problem with calling him a racist for putting that Obama mask on. Years earlier, when George W. Bush was president, he put on a George W. Bush mask. The exact same rodeo clown, exact same rodeo, exact same stunt, and nobody cared. People laughed about it. He put on the Obama mask, all of a sudden he's racist, and he needs to lose his job. Yeah. But now, to be fair, when you look at this list put together by Breitbart, it's not all physical violence. Some of it is threatening violence. Some of it is talking about Republicans and the president in really mean terms. So, but there are real issues of violence. So some of the things he's talking about, and just last week, Trump Hollywood Walk of Fame star destroyed again. That's vandalism. When people went there to try to support President Trump, the Trump supporters were violently attacked. That did just happen. It's happened twice in the last week. You had Senator Cory Booker, Democrat, New Jersey, saying Brett Kavanaugh supporters are complicit in evil. Is the New York Times calling him out for trying to spark violence against Trump supporters? You had the Denver Post running a letter to the editor that suggested Trump should be executed just 2 weeks ago. You had another teenager with a Make America Great Again hat having it ripped off. The guy spit on it, called him all kinds of names. You had a Hang Trump skirt that is peddled on Facebook. Well, that stuff's going to happen, man. We got the New Yorker magazine basically has Trump being killed on its cover. California anti-Trump protesters targeting a legal immigrants cafe over Trump support, throwing feces on it. Uber driver refusing to serve black conservatives because they were wearing a Make America Great Again hat. And then you get down to the stuff where people are really assaulted. 76-year-old man assaulted by anti-Trump people in San Diego. We had Trump, a man threatened to curb stomp a Trump supporter at Disneyland. And, it goes on and it goes on and goes on. And that's why in the New York Post, Carol Markowitz is writing, we have violent threats from the left aimed at Republicans. They're growing. Democrats are not condemning them. And the media is pretty much ignoring them. Barely a year since the shooting of House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. And then Republican Representative Diane Black, a man was indicted for threatening to kill. And the grand jury took action on that. As I mentioned, outside the office of Representative Lee Zeldin, people are threatening to kill Trump supporters. Nebraska Republican office, bricks thrown through its window. Last week, a guy beaten up in Oakland. The crowd thought he was a member of the Proud Boys, which is a right-wing, pro-Trump men's rights group. Not an alt-right racist group, just a conservative Trump men's rights group is how it's being described. And Carol Markowitz is saying this is what the far left is doing now. They call it Nazi punching. Have you seen this online? They say, look, you have the right to punch a Nazi. Well, what's a Nazi? Anything we say is a Nazi. Anything that is not like us. And here's a telling incident. According to Carol Markowitz in New York Post, she said, look at what's going on here. Just this month, a group of Proud Boys were wearing Make America Great Again hats, and they got into a fight in an L.A. bar. Josh Androwski, quoted in the L.A. Times, as leading the fight against the boys. Here's what he said, quote, the Proud Boys say they're not Nazis. Well, duh, they're not from 1945. They're not 100 years old. But in America, there's a fun little thing, which is a catch-all term for right-wing racist hate groups, and it's Nazi. Well, the problem is they're not just calling racist hate groups Nazis. They're calling, if you think the tax cuts are a good thing, you're a Nazi. If you think we should actually enforce our border laws, you're a Nazi. If you agree with basically anything Trump says, you're a Nazi, according to these left-wing groups. So this guy went on, quoted in the L.A. Times, the First Amendment protects the right to peaceably assemble. There's no such thing as a peaceable assembly of Nazis. Just by virtue of their ideology, they're causing harm. See, this is what the left has done, and they've been very good at it. They've been very good at it. You have left-wing professors in our universities across the country saying exactly what this young man told the L.A. Times. Where do you think they're getting it? We have professors at universities that are saying, if you have a conservative ideology, you're like the Nazis. You don't get to peaceably assemble. There is no right to hate speech, and that's what they call anybody who disagrees with them. Therefore, you have the right to shut them down. Because remember, and this is where they'll take something true and they'll twist it into something evil. Remember how what happened in Nazi Germany was the good people did nothing. So you good people have to stand up and do something now. You have to stand up and not attack these people and not let them continue to talk and not let their ideology continue to thrive. So what they've done is they've taken something good, like standing up to a Nazi, and they've turned it into, you have the right to punch somebody you disagree with that you've labeled a Nazi. By the way, standing up to somebody you disagree with means debating their statements and their ideology. Even if there was a real group of Nazis who believed everything the Nazis did in 1941, guess what? In America, they still have the right to speak. And you have the right to point out the flaws in their argument, to point out the evil they're representing, and to point out a better way. What you don't have the right to do is punch them just because you disagree with them. But the professors in the universities have started this, and activist groups have continued it to say, yes, you do. You have the right to punch them. Because after all, if they're Nazis, they're evil. I mean, if Hitler was here, wouldn't you punch him? So here's this guy. This guy quoted in the L.A. Times, Josh Androsky, who led the fight against the Proud Boys in this L.A. bar. The First Amendment protects the right to peaceably assemble. There is no such thing as peaceable assembly of Nazis. Just by virtue of their ideology, they are causing harm. So he thinks he has the right to call somebody a Nazi because they're conservative. That, they don't have to believe what the Nazis believe, but if you're conservative at all, we're going to call you Nazis. Therefore, you are a Nazi. Therefore, we get the right to punch you. In America, there's a fun little thing, which is the catch-all term for right-wing, racist hate groups, and it's Nazi. Of course, they get to decide if you're a racist hate group. You believe in tax cuts? Racist hate group. You believe in the border and actually following our laws? Racist hate group. Yeah. And so Carol Markowitz goes on from the New York Post, and she talks about, before the election, there was a lot of concern that when Trump lost, his supporters would take to the streets. An L.A. Times op-ed found Trump fans saying there'd be a civil war if he lost. But what's happened? He won. Where are the pieces about the liberals who actually have taken to the streets and actually have become violent? Where are the Democrats calling out that violence and telling their people not to? Where is that? She said, Maxine Waters has said, if you see somebody from the Trump cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. You push back on them. Tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. No, people who work in the Trump White House, just like everybody else, should be allowed to pump their gas or shop or go to a restaurant or a movie without having a crowd, quote, push back on them, end quote. Maybe the Democrats should actually say something about that. Well, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi said that she shouldn't have said that. Yeah, where are the rest of them? And yet instead you get the New York Times publisher saying Trump's the guy that's starting violence by saying there's fake news and that some of the journalists are enemy of the people. Double standard, anyone? 844-DIG-CHAD gets you on board the program. Oh, along those lines, San Jose. Remember the San Jose campaign rally, June 2016, where the supporters at the rally were just trying to leave the rally, and they were walking out of the building, and the anti-Trump people were throwing eggs at them, punching them, spitting at them. Well, the courts have now said that the people at that rally can sue the police for failing to protect them. Wow. How about that? The suit's 20 plaintiffs claim in a lawsuit police knowingly ordered them to leave through an exit where protesters were waiting, even though there were other safer routes and safer exits. San Francisco Chronicle reporting, the plaintiffs said they were beaten or struck by objects thrown by protesters. At least one woman was pelted by an egg. There's a video of that incident as a crowd of demonstrators surround her. Another plaintiff said an officer told her police have been instructed not to intervene. And the lawsuit says the police arrested 3 people for allegedly assaulting officers. No one was arrested for attacking Trump supporters. It's on video. Guess who ruled this way? The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco. So one of the most liberal circuit courts in America said if these allegations are true, the officers acted with deliberate indifference to a known and obvious dangerous situation and violated the constitutional rights of the Trump supporters, and they have the right to sue. The court said the officers on duty had known about the violence at past Trump rallies. The attendees alleged officers actually shepherded them into the violent crowd, actively prevented them from reaching safety. It was a 3-0 ruling, a refusal to dismiss the suit, and they have a right to sue. Wow. 844-DIG-CHAD, get you on board. 844-DIG-CHAD. The stars of the Guardians of the Galaxy come forward to support their director that got booted off of the next episode of the franchise. I think they're right, but it's time for both sides to agree. I'll get you that one in just a second. Love your thoughts as well. My name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson on The Chad Benson Show.
Welcome to Chad. No, not the country. The institution. The Chad Benson Show.
And my name is Greg Knapp, in for Chad. 844-DIG-CHAD to get on board the program. 844-DIG-CHAD. Have you been following what's been going on with Guardians of the Galaxy? They're getting ready for Volume 3 of the franchise. I love it. I think it's hilarious, and it's a lot of fun. Well, one of the members of the movies, not one that you see on screen, but director and writer James Gunn, has been let go by Disney for the movie. And it's because of some tweets he wrote 20 years ago. Now, these tweets he apologized for years ago, and they were very inappropriate jokes, and I certainly don't defend any of the tweets, but when this was happening, I said, this is the kind of stuff that conservatives have been against, and now conservatives are doing it. Conservatives were able to dig up old tweets in the interweb, never goes away, and they brought these forward, and the mob mentality took over, and Disney said, okay, we got to let you go. Well, now the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy has come forward, and they've said, hey, you know what? We're shocked by his abrupt firing. We certainly don't support any of those tweets, but this is not the guy that we know. The tweets are not the guy we know. We've been with him making Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2. This is a good man. And we believe his apologies. We believe that he's a good guy. And we think he should be allowed back on the movie. This is the best thing that they released. Ben Shapiro put together a nice little piece on this. Here's from the stars of Guardians of the Galaxy. Quote, there is little due process in the court of public opinion. James Gunn, James is likely not the last good person to be put on trial. Given the growing political divide in this country, it's safe to say instances like this will continue. Although we hope Americans from across the political spectrum can ease up on the character assassinations and stop weaponizing mob mentality. I couldn't agree more, but it's unbelievably ironic and hypocritical to have that statement coming from Hollywood stars. Because that's what Hollywood celebrities have been doing. Now, I don't think anybody who was on Guardians of the Galaxy has done this, but celebrities have been out there with their hashtag social justice warriors every time they see somebody say something they don't like. They want a boycott. They want somebody to lose their job. The guy that started Mozilla, he was kicked off, booted out of his position simply because he donated some money to the campaign that said marriage is between one man and one woman. Well, no way can we have that. He's got to go. So I agree with these stars that we've got to stop doing that. But don't they have to stop doing it? Ben Shapiro put it well. He said, look, social media mobbing has become a sport for many, taking scalps the object of the sport. Said, these were offensive, stupid jokes by James Gunn. And as of yet, nobody has surfaced any serious allegations that he actually is a pedophile. But it's also true that Hollywood has created and exacerbated this sport of social media mobbing. So Hollywood, I'm happy to endorse a program of live and let live when it comes to political rhetoric and comedy. But you're going to have to do the same if you don't want this boomerang to come back home to to you. Do you think they will? I'm not holding my breath. Thanks for letting me hang with you. My name's Greg Knapp, in for Chad Benson. Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show.